everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is one of our Solidarity Friday episodes. Maybe soon to be rebranded. Still trying to figure that out. Kyle, how you doing today?
Pretty good, Joe. How are you doing?
Lovely. It's been snowing for the whole day, so I'm getting pretty psyched. Beautiful nice. Time of year. Yeah, that transition. Yesterday it was all bare ground out my window. Now it's all covered.
Sweet. I just saw that my local ski resort has projected opening date for December 10th. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm getting excited.
Yeah, outstanding. So today we're doing something a little bit different from normal. We recorded a whole bunch of audio and didn't want to kind of give you too many short episodes. Maybe you like that kind of thing, but we want to do just a little bit of Solidarity Friday, and we'll do a little bit of recorded interview. Today we have Peyton Nyquvest, is that his name? Of Numinus, CEO of Numinus. Yeah. And interesting guy, really nice guy, and really compelling story. You weren't in the room for that one, right?
No,
just me and David.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked his energy, like what they're bringing to the table. It sounds like there could be some really game-changing stuff coming from them. A Canadian company, and get this, man, like kind of lifelong chronic pain sufferer. And we get into it a little bit, and psychedelics just kind of, they just went away. It's like, that's interesting. And that wasn't really what he went there for. So it's like, what is that?
Exploring that a little bit, right?
I think so. There's a few companies, I think, looking at chronic pain, maybe Trip, Remap Therapeutics, Trip, Remap Therapeutics. I think I just said that. And Numinus. Yeah. So like there's at least a few. I know there's a number of big deal scientists working on the topic as well in universities. So hopefully we'll have some relief for folks in a few years. That would be lovely. Yeah. So
I know Dr. Devin Christie's over there, and I remember doing that whole recording on pain and psychedelics.
Yeah.
I wasn't too sure if it was a Numinus project or just something that her and Will are trying to explore separate of Numinus.
I feel like there is something related there, but I don't remember offhand. I really wish I got to meet her in person because that podcast was something special you did there with Devin Christie and Will.
Feedback from that.
Yeah. Court Wing kept telling me to listen to it, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it, man. I don't have time to listen to my own podcast. Come on. But it was so good. So really appreciate Will, Christy, and you for driving that in that right awesome direction. And these short interviews with CEOs are tough. Like we don't, take it for what it is, right? It's the CEO talking about his company. We don't have a business relationship there with Numinus yet. Though if they want to pay us for ads, I'm in. But it's a really big company. I had no idea how big it was compared to some of the others. So made me excited to know there's really cool people with personal experience in the healing steering the ship.
Yeah, I feel good about them.
Yeah. Like how different is that from like Compass, right? Like somewhat psychedelic naive people, I think. I don't know much about those two, but steering a big ship, like actively not caring what people say about him in the market, which is pretty weird, but whatever. We'll get to the bottom of it eventually, I think. I've got their emails. I just need to make the time to make contact and have some convos, but so underwater. So sorry, Compass. We'll get around
time
to it
eventually.
Time
is a precious thing nowadays.
Yeah. So I guess before we kind of chat about news and things going on, January 6th, Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists kicks off. We are actively selling seats. I think we've sold somewhere between 12 and 15 total seats so far out of 40. So they are moving. If you want to join us, please grab one soon. There might also, this is a last minute thought, but there might also be some Black Friday deals. I hate to get in on Black Friday, but we're just going to do it. And you'll probably see some stuff on our socials. So if you're following our socials and on our email, just stay tuned. And it might be something you want in there. Don't want to say too much more about it because we don't have many details.
I don't even know about that.
Yeah, I think David sent me a couple emails and I was like, that's actually a great idea. So let's do that. So Also, we've got the ketamine and trauma series coming out. When is that available for purchase, or is it available for pre-purchase?
Not yet. I'm hoping to get that launched pretty soon. We've had some delays just due to some website-related things, so we're just figuring that out and moving forward with that ASAP. So sorry for the delay, folks. I was actually thinking about it today when I was walking around, like, oh man, we've been talking about it. But yeah, we've just had some delays on our back end here with the course, so sorry.
No worries. And then also, can you speak about the history class with Gerry?
Yes, so this is called Psychedelics Past, Present, and Future with Dr. Gerry Brown. We're going to be releasing this pre-recorded course. It will have 6 courses, and this will be launched in the new year. So come January, we'll have that up for sale. I'm excited about it. I know Gerry's been working pretty hard on this for a few months, so I'm just excited to get it out there.
Yeah, this is going to, I think, be a really democratizing thing because, typically people need to dig through all sorts of books and archives to get a handle on psychedelic history. And this makes it somewhat accessible. Sit down, watch some lectures, listen to some lectures and go for it. Where are we with like transcripts for all this stuff? Are we now doing transcripts for classes?
Ketamine course has all transcripts and some show notes and whatnot. As for Gerry's course, I think we should probably have transcripts for that as well.
Cool. Excellent. I think it's a good idea. And
accessibility is important for folks.
I really, we forget about it. We're podcasters, so everything's audio. And then video just makes it better. But, there are people who can't see. There's people who can't hear. So I think it's, I think it's a cool thing we can do long-term here to make it better. Cool. So from here, what else do we have going? I don't think we're doing anything in January, February in person, like physical events, but I've been tossing around the idea of a pop-up workshop in Breckenridge, but we'll see. Well, and I don't even know what it would be. I'm thinking like a navigating psychedelics in a large group format, just kind of a full day. But TBD, everybody. And I don't know.
Nice to get out there and do some more in-person events now that things are opening back up. I'm getting excited about it.
I hung out with a few therapist friends in their office the other day, and it was just so nice just to be with other people in a calm, non-conference setting. Yeah. So I guess as way of transitioning, do we have any more comments on microdose Wonderland? Or have we kind of beat that one to death?
I think we kind of covered it. Well, I was listening to the podcast that you released last week, and it sounds like you kind of did a nice little recap there as well. So I don't think we need to say much more, but I guess it is nice to have context around the episode that will be following this little intro, that it was recorded at Microdose. But
Microdose sent out an email, kind of a cool recap. I think Sybin put together some recap video. I didn't check it out. And then in that email, it was also notifying all of us attendees that there was a COVID transmission there. So, some positive testing, which, how did you not know that was going to happen? You get that many people together in the middle of a pandemic. Of course it's going to happen, especially it's like Florida. People are really loose with masks at conferences and just everywhere in Florida, right? Like the venue mandated masks, but it wasn't like they were going up and like telling everybody to put their mask back on, right? So it's kind of like, it's a tough scene. So I think they did the best they could, though. You can always do better, but whatever. I think it was fine. Like just hanging out with your 5 people in a house, like you can get a transmission. So it's like we're one-on-one, you can get a transmission. Licking doorknobs, So I'm about to get my booster, I hope, on Saturday super early. So I'm back to work on Monday without any impact. So keep you all posted. Did you get yours already?
I did. I got it before I went down to Miami.
Nice.
A little nervous being a little immunocompromised, so I felt like I would do that.
Awesome. So, onward. What other things?
I
So,
saw some. Oh, you can
go
go.
ahead.
I was
I
just going
wanted
to
to talk
say.
about the toad, but where are you going?
Cool. Yeah, no, I just had a little news article. You mentioned Cybin, and it reminded me of some news I heard about Cybin recently. But we can go back to that if you want to, if you got a
Oh, you go for it with
thought
Simon.
about the toad. Okay, cool. Yeah, so Cybin awards grant for psychedelic treatment clinic at Lenox Hill Hospital to benefit underserved communities. So this is coming off of biospace.com. I forget where I originally saw the article, but this is the first one that popped up. Um, so yeah, they announced this award to grant the first psychedelic treatment clinic at Lenox Hill Hospital, part of the Northwell Health, to serve marginalized and underserved communities on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, in New York. This program aims to become one of the first hospital-based clinical sites to offer medicine in the United States. So they have about 450 beds, acute care facility on Manhattan's Upper East Side. Yeah, so that's really exciting to hear that a company like Cybin is really trying to fill that gap there, and sounds like kind of getting it integrated into a like a hospital setting, which is really exciting. Really
Hmm.
excited to hear what they end up doing. Um,
I'm also a little confused by this quote. It is time for psychedelic medicine to climb down from the ivory tower and into the community, says Cybin CCO, Alex Belser, Dr. Alex Belser, great person, by the way. Um, is it in the ivory tower? It's everywhere, right? It's not just in university labs. But it's interesting, right? Because we're talking about psychedelic therapy. So are we talking about ketamine? Um, are we talking about MDMA? And how does that work, right? Are we talking tryptamines? Because these things are still locked up in clinical trials. So are I don't know. Like having a nice hospital like this makes clinical trials cheaper, especially in New York City, where you can experiment on poor people. Um, the burden becomes lower. The burden of cost comes a little bit lower. So I hope there's going to be some cool progress there. I hope Alex Belser is kind of steering this because I really trust
sounds like
Alex.
he is. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Um, but what are we actually saying? Like this looks like a press release to a
Well,
degree,
I think,
right?
that statement around the ivory tower, I mean, that is a big conversation within, the accessibility, right? Is this just going to be in very expensive clinics and retreats? So that's the way I interpret that, to be able to kind of integrate more into the hospital setting, make it a little bit more accessible to, different communities versus just these high ticket, price tag services that, it's really out of the reach of most people. So.
So it is available now, right? But you have to often break the law or travel across the globe. If that's what they mean, got it. But is that what they mean? You're probably right. Um, but it's the way a lot of these things are written are kind of frustrating in that it's like it sounds like it presupposes it's available and legal already domestically.
Right.
Just like Denver legalized all mushrooms, or all of Colorado has legal mushrooms. Like, no, it doesn't. Like, it's like decrim only, just in Denver. So it's probably the same kind of thing that's driving me a little nuts with language choice. So we just got to be really careful with our messaging. Um, PR team probably helped with that, so I get it. But just for what it's worth, that's my comment. And yeah, like I think having these things integrated to larger medical systems, and maybe it doesn't need to be in the hospital, but it's a clinic attached to a hospital, like in some way with a relationship. So hospitals are super expensive.
I don't know if I really would want to do any sort of psychedelic treatment in a hospital. I feel like I want to be in a nicer setting, but
Right, like a lot of these trials are going on in Bellevue, which has a horrific history. It's probably not that beautiful inside, and uh, they still get decent results. But yeah, spot on, man. Like I don't necessarily want to be in creepy, ugly buildings with like lots of security and lots of other sick people in there. Like that's kind of think set and setting. But if it makes it accessible and they're doing 400 something treatments a day. Like that's pretty solid, but can they scale to that point? I think there's a question. Yeah. So back to the toad. So Mike Tyson continues to get a lot of press. And there's a new cannabis brand. I think I haven't dug into this one at all, but someone told me recently he has a toad ranch where he's raising toads, which doesn't sound right to me. You could do a sort of like a guarded ranch that nobody can come on and make nice habitat, but
I think somebody tried to do. They tried to create a ranch
Rack
years
Raza
ago.
was on this. Terra Incognita or something. Oh, you know what that was?
That's
Kyle?
what it was.
There was actually another fundraiser that Dr. Gerry Sandoval, kind of arch enemy number one, or two, depending on your perspective in the 5-MeO world. He actually had a whole fundraise to have a whole toad ranch for his supply. And I don't, of course they have all this language in there about respect to the toad, but I kind of have my doubts based on what I've observed. Maybe there's something authentic there, but I feel like that was kind of a scam. But I haven't read enough lately to know that for sure. But I think there were other initiatives as well.
And I remember people getting a little upset about it. Yeah. Yeah, it was like a sanctuary. That's what they were trying to create, like a toad sanctuary.
Yeah, I think it was like a nonprofit where they could buy the land, then have the whole retreat and all that. It's like, and if you did it just south of the border into Mexico, then the land is way more cheap. Dr. Gerry Sandoval, I think, is an Mexican citizen, so I believe it would have been simple enough for him to do that. Yeah, so complicated stuff. Despite the Mike Tyson rape thing, I think there's something around his unwillingness to change language around talking about the toad. Like he did this a lot at the conference. That's pretty much what he does on his podcast. And there's a whole culture around it.
It was interesting to hear people talk about his talk at Microdose, and I've heard a few people just kind of saying that, he just kept referring it as toad, and I can't believe he did it over 60 times. And yeah, I heard from multiple people they're a little kind of concerned how he was talking about it there.
Right. So I don't know, 60 times seems somewhat normal, in the scene. How many times have I taken MDMA? God knows. I don't, and I'm not freaked out about the fact that I don't know either. Some people would be. But, I think 5-MeO DMT from the Sonoran Desert Toad is a little different. Variability in dosing is extreme. Synthetic, easy dosing.
Yeah, and shorter acting, right? So
shorter acting.
I feel you could do more.
Yeah. And, some people don't understand all the implications here of engaging in this black market with the toad. A lot of people are making their full-time living just going out at night and harvesting these things, bringing them 20 miles away from their home, leaving them either injured or too far from home to defend themselves, and they just die. If you go into their habitats, you can introduce molds and decimate large territories of these things. And the most ethical way to harvest this stuff is probably from toads that are already dead on the road. Somebody else already killed them. You can still milk a gland or something.
Yeah, I wonder if that's possible if they're dead.
I'm told it is. By some people in the Tucson area. So you can just drive around, harvest the roadkill, and then you're not impacting living populations.
I wonder if that has an impact on the quality.
TBD. But what is the quality? I don't know. There's no subjective difference in the experience from synthetic to naturally sourced. So, in the data I've been exposed to. So, what molecule is molecule in my book for the most part. There is that spiritual angle, but I don't think we're at the point where we can really have that conversation. And we don't know what other secondary drugs are in there. And it's, it's not the safest compound, right? People have certainly died and got hurt. And if that's true, then I think there's an ethical obligation to have really safe dosing practices. And with the variability from naturally sourced, I just don't think it's there. And I believe it is threatened, if not endangered, in California and New Mexico. I don't know what the figures are in Arizona. My guess is they just haven't done a survey to get that. So do we really want to be having celebrities hyping endangered species for harvest? Like I immediately think of rhino horn. Now rhinos are pretty much gone. So, these kind of like predatory animals as like predating on animals for medicine, especially wildlife, some big downstream consequences there. So we've got to be really careful, respectful of what we have left on the planet.
And just thinking, like, I don't know what the toad brings to the environment, but when we think about when, certain parts of the ecosystem go
like
away,
what ecological initiative functions.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, once you start getting rid of things, it might have a big impact on, the ecosystem in some way. I'm not too sure. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but just thinking about everything kind of plays a role in the environment, right? And what happens when something kind of get rid of it, things start to change a little bit. Maybe they eat a certain insect that, otherwise would turn invasive and destroy crops, right? I don't know. Just spitballing here.
Right. I was driving through southern Arizona recently, and I saw how much agriculture was going on there. It's somewhat horrifying, given their water situation. Anyway, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's a great point. Like, what are the downstream implications of when a species goes away? Other things usually move in to fill the niche. Could be anything from bacteria and fungi to larger, interesting predators, or who knows, or other swaths of the soil food web kind of just go away. Yeah. So unintended consequences of somebody trying to do good, like it always happens. Devil's in the details. And one further thing, as far as I know, Dr. Gerry Sandoval initiated Mike Tyson into this whole scene, and I'm a little troubled by that. And that's under discussed. Dr. Gerry Sandoval is too dangerous to be involved. I'm not interested in being in the same room or at the same conference as that guy. So, track record is quite problematic.
He's still doing work, going around and serving.
Allegedly, he quit because of all the negative publicity online, but I kind of doubt it. Yeah. And for those who don't know, the website's down, but 5-MeO-DMT malpractice.org. You can find it on the Wayback Machine to read all that stuff that's there. And there's a project going right now to get that information back up online. And some people you've heard of probably are helping. So more on that later when it's back online, because people need to know. All right, cool. So Peyton Nyquvest from Numinus is coming up now, and I hope you all enjoy it. Let us know what you think of our little micro Solidarity Friday and this interview with Peyton. Thank you all for tuning in. And reminder, January 6th, Navigating Psychedelics kicks off. So join us. It's going to be fun. All right. Thanks, Kyle. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Here we are back at Wonderland with Payton Nyquvest, CEO, co-founder of Numinus. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're psyched. So I guess before we even go into Numinus, let's start with you. How did you get interested in this space?
Yeah, I really come to this space as a patient. I'd suffered with severe chronic pain since birth, had associated complex PTSD, and towards sort of the end of my journey with chronic pain, suicidal ideation, really because of my diagnosis, the level of suffering, and not being able to find a treatment that was making a change, and ended up turning to psychedelic therapy really as a last ditch effort. And
did you find an underground option for yourself?
So I ended up going to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca. That was my first psychedelic experience. I had no previous experience with psychedelics.
My first trip was ayahuasca too.
Was
it was like waited years. I tried mushrooms, it didn't work.
Yeah. Well, and it was really, I was in the trauma ward at Lionsgate Hospital. I booked my flights while I was in the hospital, went home, packed my bags and got on the plane.
Wow.
And, I'm hesitant to create an expectation of a panacea or anything like that. But 1 week with ayahuasca and I never had any chronic pain issues ever again. And so it was quite profound. Yeah.
Can you speak briefly about what the chronic pain was?
Yeah. So severe gut pain that would then sort of just, the best way I can explain it is just manifest into overwhelming pain. Towards the end of that journey, was hospitalized 3-4 times a week. And really, as I mentioned, the healthcare system was sort of I exhausted all modalities of treatment. And it's a very scary place where, especially in the emergency ward, and doctors are looking back at you going like, we don't have an answer for you. And so much
went through this with my girlfriend recently with like post-COVID neurological overload and stuff. Heinous. They're like, yeah, we'll put you on that drip again, I guess. But like, and 3 times in a week, why?
That's exactly. So how I was being treated was just being hit with morphine and opiates. And I would go in begging, saying like, look, like I have a history of substance abuse in my family. And I said, look, like I don't want to be back here anymore. You don't want me here anymore. That's a Band-Aid solution. And at the worst, it's something I'm going to get addicted to because I recognize that it's the only thing stopping my pain, but it's not, it's symptom management and it's not curing anything. And it wasn't out of lack of trying from the healthcare system, but to interrupt that pattern of trauma needs tools that can get you really to the core root of what's creating that suffering in the first place, as opposed to managing the symptom.
Back to your ayahuasca, were you in a shamanic context?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. I think that's always worth going.
Yeah.
Where are we going to
go? So once you were kind of entering that new stage of your healing journey and mentally and physically, what were you then thinking? Like literally to just talk us through the steps of where did you want to go and how did you do it? And how did everything just fall into place? I'm sure it wasn't easy, but what happened?
Yeah. So an interesting thing happened for me in my early teens. My mom struggled a lot with substance use disorder. She got sober when I was 12 and came home and said, sorry about the last 12 years, you might want to start working with somebody. And because I was suffering with chronic pain even back then, I really took it to heart. And in my early teens became very passionate about my mental health and the intersection of my mental health, my physical suffering that I was having, and recognizing that there was a correlation there. And sort of through that journey became something of like a mental health advocate in my community, really sort of twofold. One, I saw a lot of friends who, could probably benefit from some of the therapy work that I was doing. And I didn't want to be the only kid in therapy. So I was hoping that some people were going to join. And that journey just always really stuck with me. My chronic pain symptoms continued to get worse, but in my mom's sobriety and then healing, I just saw this amazing potential for someone to like really shift out of suffering and actually take their suffering and turn it into opportunity. And that even for my chronic pain, in a particular ceremony that I was in with ayahuasca, the narrative for me since birth suffering with this was something is broken, I'm broken, and I need to try and fix it. And I sat in a ceremony where it was just this deep compassion and recognition, like I am inherently not broken. There's things that have happened in my life that are expressing in a certain way of suffering, but that's also my opportunity to more deeply bring compassion to myself. And I just sat with being compassionate and grateful for having chronic pain in the first place, because it led me on this amazing journey of self-exploration and healing, and compassion for self. And, the thing that I like to say is, I don't think that system is gone in terms of keeping me in check or in alignment, maybe, but the pain is gone. And instead being able to recognize that it's a gift, and that there's a needing of accountability in terms of how we're approaching our mental health. There were certain things, that I recognized were probably out of alignment in terms of what I was doing. And now, with this space in particular, it just feels like very much in alignment for me, and something I'm really excited about.
I'm noticing a theme, like thankful for the wound so that I can kind of come heal others or help heal others. And this is a Greek archetype, Chiron, the wounded healer. Is super like archetypal. It's cool to see it, like how it manifested for you in an interesting way. Now, how do we get to Numinus?
Yeah. So, with my experience through my own journey of mental health and healthcare and all these things, it was always probably the thing that was most core and passionate to me. I have a finance background by trade. I usually tell people not to hold that against me. That's just how I ended up here. But and actually, when I was 18, and I got into the finance business, I thought that was going to be my way to help people. I don't have a medical background. I'm not a doctor. But maybe I love the idea of relating with people, and maybe I could help them through, supportive financial means and stuff like that. I very quickly recognized making people more money doesn't make them happier. Usually quite the opposite. Yeah. But I also love supporting new industry. And I love the idea of creating things. And so that was something that I was really passionate about. But going through my healing journey, as I researched psychedelics more and more, and I researched psychedelics for probably a year and a half before I took the first one. And I just saw that there was something compelling there that maybe I could try and help support. Went through my journeys with ayahuasca and saw the profound shift in my own life, and came out of that experience really only just trying to figure out how I could give back. I felt like I needed to give back to something that had saved my life, and started very quickly having conversations with Health Canada and MAPS and British Columbia Centre on Substance Use, and just recognized that there was way more than philanthropy that I could do. At the time, there was really no corporate interest in the space. Compass was sort of just getting off of the ground, but there was really no other options there. And from
17, 18.
Yeah, around there. And the thing that I noticed as well is, and from my experience in finance, was knowing how hard it is to raise money, and not for profit or philanthropic capital is very, very challenging. And so what I was talking to these not-for-profit and academics groups was, what can I help build or create that could maybe take some of the pressure off of the financial strain of advancing research? And that's where Numinus really was birthed from, is how can we help build infrastructure? How can we help try to create the models to create accessibility, moving, these treatments out of a research context and into a practicing context? And that's really where it came from.
It's unique in that you're saying, hey, researchers, people in the space, what can we do business-wise? And it's an awesome approach, right? Like, we can use these things as tools to really progress. And we are. You are. Like, there's so many other groups doing it. And it's just a cool spin. So I'm coming in, I've heard Numinus all over the place, for years now, but I feel like I know next to nothing. And I'm really excited to hear from you. Like, what did you start with? What are you up to now?
Yeah.
Or like, what are the most exciting things inside Numinus?
Yeah. So a few things, our two focuses are creating that clinical platform. We do ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. We also do a host of just traditional mental health services. We've grown through acquisition for the most part on the clinical side. There's clinical sites that do really, really good work that have been looking at psychedelics for a long time, and they've been setting up their infrastructure to start to be able to support that. So that's sort of Numinus Health. We also are able to carry out CRO services there. We're the first MAPS collaboration. We're carrying out some of their MDMA work, but also training practitioners and getting sort of the workforce ready to be able to hold psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. As everybody talks about, this is a very different kind of treatment than we've held within the healthcare setting. So getting clinical protocols set up, getting intake, getting preparation, getting integration, which, today with the Compass results, I think really highlights the importance of integration and clinical care. And so that's been a big focus of ours. And then on the other side, we have Numinus Biosciences, which is our Health Canada licensed lab and production facility that was licensed by Health Canada quite a while ago to be able to do not only analytical testing, but also production, importation, and exportation of pretty much all the known psychedelic compounds. Health Canada then amended that license about a year and a half ago to allow us to harvest, cultivate, extract, and produce a psilocybin product from naturally occurring psilocybin-containing mushrooms.
Huge.
We grew, from what we can tell, the first legal psilocybin mushrooms since the 70s, which was pretty cool, and starting to create a natural psilocybin product to be able to meet FDA and Health Canada standards. As most people know, the psilocybin used to date has been primarily synthetic. And so to be able to create a natural psilocybin product, which, you know, Mother Nature's been perfecting psilocybin for quite a long time. And what we've seen is there's other compounds that exist within psilocybin-containing fungi that have significant therapeutic benefit. Well-known compounds like melatonin, serotonin, baeocystin, all the way to previously undiscovered compounds as well. So that's some of the work that we're advancing. And we have a phase 1 clinical study with that extraction launching in the early part of next year.
Now, is the extraction trying to mimic like the profile in a certain like cultivar of psilocybin cubensis, or is it like targeting certain molecules from the plant derived?
So it's more of a
fungi derived. Sorry.
Yeah. So really what we look at is you're going to have to create standards to be able to meet FDA. You know, there's a certain purity of psilocybin you're going to be able to have in there. You have to have the profile of the other compounds in place, but it's really, I don't think we get to a place necessarily where it's one or the other, synthetic or natural. I think there's probably some space for both, but I think the thing you're seeing, and we see it a lot in Canada, is so much of what we're talking about in the psychedelic space right now is like indication treating, and we're going to own an indication. And the thing that we see is we see a medical access model potentially coming through for psilocybin, especially in Canada. Health Canada has made large strides to provide regulatory change for psilocybin, and that's what we see. And we liaise quite a bit with Health Canada. We have a very good relationship with them, and I think you could see a medical access model for psilocybin. And I think the more important conversation to be having right now is, where does psychedelic interventions fit within the healthcare system? We keep talking about treatment-resistant depression, treatment-resistant anxiety, or treatment-resistant PTSD. And the reason why the psychedelic space has seen this reemergence is there's a huge burden on the healthcare system at the moment. And there's this recognition that psychedelics could take some of that burden off of the healthcare system. So why are we putting psychedelic treatments at the end of a patient's life cycle? Why should they have to go through this prolonged period of suffering instead of, why is it not a standard of care with curative intent? Put it at the beginning. And that for us has really been the focus, is where does psychedelics fit as an intervention? Not, you know, how do we own an indication based off of, okay, someone's gone through the gamut of all these other treatments and now, you know, arriving potentially far worse off and suffering far worse than they needed to, because we need to try them on 3 different SSRIs or 3 other different therapies before coming to psychedelic work. If they're safe and effective, why are they not prioritized? Yeah.
Yeah, right on. And I think, you know, we're saying that psilocybin, amongst other psychedelics, are transdiagnostic, transtherapeutic. It's not just the one indication they should be limited to, or in America, have that indication be on label. And so if we're thinking that this psilocybin is this somewhat miraculous plant that can be used for multiple conditions, how does the Numinus kind of clinical model, where we're looking at kind of bricks and mortar buildings, kind of spread the accessibility out in a country like Canada, which is kind of underpopulated, pretty big place, and the extent to which digital therapeutics might play a part in that?
It's a great question. And I think digital tools and therapeutics to help with the heavy lifting of intake, preparation, community, ongoing care. I think those are where there's significant room for innovation in this space. And I think that's where we see a lot of support. I mean, majority of our therapists at the moment, we have quite a large therapist roster. Majority of them are over Zoom at the moment. They have clients who are really interested in getting back in person, but for the most part, they're over Zoom. So transitioning the sort of brick and mortar part of this to really be focused on highest client outcomes with sort of the intervention and doing the psychedelic intervention there, and then being able to provide long-term support for people, whether that's virtually or in community sort of group setting as well, that's more scalable. That's where we see some really big opportunities. And, again, I touched on the Compass and, results that came out today that are a hot topic for everybody. If you look at those results, the early part or the early results right after dosing are very significant. They're significantly shifting for people. Everybody's talking about, long term it's going off. Well, what was the clinical protocol? 2 integration sessions.
Week. We see this in universities still today too.
Right.
Yeah.
2 integration sessions. We all know anybody who has experience with psychedelics, especially underground practitioners, that's not appropriate. And it's the limitations of research and research protocols. I'm very enthused by the impact of immediately post-dosing. And I think it also validates the necessity of robust care models that are able to hold people through integration and ongoing support. These are not panaceas. They're not silver bullets. They can certainly create profound shift for people, but it's as you're being able to integrate that into your own life. And I think, again, the importance of care models, community, and a language, where people understand what it takes and what this experience is like.
I've got a feeling, Peyton, that you're the kind of guy, and the way that you are a CEO for your company, you're being straight. Like some companies, there's a lot of kind of, PR and suits and ties. And right now, Peyton's wearing some nice sneakers and some pretty funky clothes. And we're real people here. And you're talking from the heart. The feeling I've got from Numinus, I know May, and I've had a couple of lovely chats with Sharon here, who's your chief science officer, is the people that seem to work for you, they really believe in this. And I think a lot of them have been touched by mental health and addiction and trauma as well, as you were really bravely saying. And when you spoke yesterday at the panel discussion in the auditorium in front of, a few hundred people, the first thing you said, you wanted to honor, the traditional owners of this land. And I've seen lovely pictures of, on your company having lunches. And why is that important to you? Does that bring, shareholder value? What's the feel that you're going for? And why do you think that this is kind of part of this new paradigm, do you think, at Numinus?
It was really interesting. So land acknowledgements are an important part of, I think there's not enough conversation around reciprocity in this space and underserved populations. And you look at the work of psychedelics, these are traditional medicines that have been used for thousands, if not more years. And nobody's having that conversation, I think, to the degree that they need to. And for us, we're fortunate enough to have people who really understand this work. And when we started the company, again, the focus was, I didn't even think public companies, the idea that I get to masquerade as a psychedelic CEO is a bizarre thing to me still. We founded the company because we knew that healing was possible with psychedelics, and we wanted to support that. And there's no shortage of indigenous elements to this that have proven that for thousands and thousands of years. And, we have a good relationship with the underground community. We have a good relationship with people who have been involved in the space a long time. And for us, models of care and accessibility are really, really important. The conversations around, again, treatment-resistant depression. We know that psychedelic therapy, the current financial model, isn't necessarily cheap in terms of a treatment. So how do we make it more accessible for people? How do we bring in public health coverage, insurance coverage? There's lots of groups that are looking to support healing of underserved populations. and you've got to be able to meet those people where they're at. And so for us, going back to the people who we work with, we all share that ethos, and that's why we're here. And yes, we're a public company, and that's just because it's a tool in the toolbox to be able to grow and scale at the size that we aspire to be. But it's not. We're not a public company masquerading as a psychedelic company. We're a psychedelic company that has the opportunity to use the public markets to grow and scale quickly. And that's never been, I think, more evident than recently. And I'm grateful for the way that the company continues to show up.
Yeah, maybe for the next few minutes, thanks for that, Peyton. How does your team kind of project the growth stages of the kind of clinical network and the infrastructure, Canada and beyond, I hope into America?
Yeah.
What's the plan for the next 3 to 5 years, perhaps?
Yeah, so the plan for us really to continue to scale both in Canada and in the US, we firmly obviously believe that psychedelics are going to be a standard of care. And our focus has really been on how do we create the highest or the best client outcomes? You've seen this rush to ketamine clinics, for example. And I think ketamine is really interesting. I think it definitely has a clinical application, but it's just a tool. And I think to sort of like rush to try and pop up as many ketamine locations as possible and not really, really focus on the protocol, the safety, the care. That for us is really the focus of how do we really figure out how to do psychedelic therapy the best and be of best service to our clients. So we have a fairly thoughtful approach in terms of scaling. And for us, we really want to be known as the most trusted brand in the psychedelic space in terms of what we're providing for people.
Beautiful. I love that answer. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a panel yesterday that was talking about valuations of companies, and a friend of ours, Juan Pablo JP Capello, was talking about, he had sold his company for 750 million. And he said that was a failure because it was all just numbers and money.
Right.
What he's doing now, his true value and success is accessibility, diversity, and inclusion in his team, and just making this affordable and accessible. So it sounds like a similar thing. And your experiences of doing the shamanic work yourself in Costa Rica, and honoring Mother Earth through what she's given us with psilocybin really, gives that sense of respect and wanting to do this the right way, and to earn that reputation. So any final thoughts about, where we are at this space in life, and any kind of blessings or messages for our viewers that are listening?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've really loved about this space, and certainly it's gone through its cycles, but exactly what you said, I think it's recognized across stakeholder groups that intentionality and depth of care is going to dictate success. I don't think that, it's even the finance industry. When I speak with institutions and stuff like that, they say, wow, you guys really seem to be approaching this from a 3 to 5 year standpoint and intentional. And my response is, who's not?
Everybody else.
Right. Well, and I think it's crazy. Not just
here, but generally.
Yeah. I think, let's not be short-sighted and recognize, a paradigm shift in healthcare is so significant. We haven't seen significant innovation in mental health in 35, 40 years. So that's a big shift. And, for us, I think that's been really encouraging. I think let's not try and squeeze psychedelics into old paradigms of, the pharmaceutical space or something like that. Let's recognize that these are interventions and where do they fit within the healthcare system. And I think there's exciting opportunities in Canada. We're really grateful to be a part of the MAPS work. We're I love what Rick and his team continue to commit to. And I think over the next number of years, I think you're really going to see psychedelics fit as a standard of care with curative intent. And I think we need it now more than we ever have.
Thank you, Peyton. I think our time's up. This has been an absolute pleasure. So this is David Drapkin and Joe Moore of Psychedelics Today, signing out from Miami. Peyton Nyquvest, CEO and co-founder of Numinus, wishing you a wonderful day in Miami. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can't wait to do more.